This is a story about a street that isn't on any map. It was well after midnight, and my taxi was making what should have been the final leg of our journey. The driver and I had been speaking in hushed tones up until this point, having discussed everything from his favorite brand of cigarettes to weather. Or not, one could actually drown in a pool at a nearby water park. We were both exhausted by the time we got to the final destination. He let me out at the curb in front of an apartment complex, and I paid him what I owed. Then I thanked him for the ride and started walking towards the door. That's when I heard him say, "Wait, you live there, right?" Confused, I turned back to see him standing next to his car with his head tilted and eyes narrowed against the dim light that spilled from the open door. I said, "Yeah, that's where I live." But he shook his head as if trying to clear away some sort of fog. "No, I mean, you live here," he said, gesturing to the direction I just came from, but there was nothing there. "I thought you lived there," he added, pointing back to the apartment building. I stared at him for a moment. "Why would I live there?" "There's nothing there," I replied. "But you were coming from there, weren't you?" he asked. We went downtown. Then we drove by the river. Then we came here. I didn't drive past anything else. Did you? I responded, exasperated, knowing that if I didn't get upstairs soon, the people inside would start wondering where I went. You did too. We both did. "You wouldn't remember," the cab driver said. He opened the door to his car and walked towards me. As he approached, I could see that his face was pale and sweat beaded on his forehead. My annoyance turned to concern. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked. "Look, I don't want to cause you any trouble, but I gotta go," I added, motioning with my hand for him to step back so I could walk around him. But he stopped, as if rooted to the spot, and looked me up and down. "Tell me which way you came from again," he said in a strained voice. Startled by his sudden change in demeanor, I replied, "We came from downtown." "Why are you acting like this?" I asked. "Where exactly do you think I live?" The cab driver took a deep breath and stepped aside, allowing me to pass. As I continued walking towards the building, I noticed he wasn't following me. Instead, he remained by his car, watching me intently. I tried to ignore him and fumbled with my keys, but he called out to me, "Hey, listen to me." I turned to face him. "What is it?" "What are you?" I started to ask, but he cut me off. "Do you remember what street we turned down to get here?" He shouted over the noise of a passing car. I looked away from him and thought for a moment. It was the second street on the left after the bridge, wasn't it? I responded. He nodded slowly and ran a hand through his hair. "Good. I need you to tell me which side of the road your place is on," he said. "Like the left side or the right side?" When I realized what he was asking, I couldn't help but laugh. "You want me to look out my window to see which side of the street my apartment is on?" "Surely you know which street that is," I said, knowing full well which street he was talking about. It was one of the main roads into town. It was a bustling thoroughfare lined with shops, restaurants, and offices. I crossed the street and stood outside the taxi. "Don't you understand?" he shouted, frustration evident in his voice. "I don't remember driving down that street. I swear, I only know one route into the city center, and I always take it." His words caught me off guard. A chill wind swept down the street, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I thought about how tired he must be after a night of driving and decided to play along. "Okay, so what seems to be the problem, Mr. Cab Driver?" I asked. "We can sort this out." He hesitated for a moment before replying. "I think I might have taken a wrong turn somewhere, and I'm pretty sure I've never driven down that street before," he admitted, shamefaced. "Listen, I really don't want to cause you any inconvenience, but I have to go," I said, reaching for the door handle. "Let me check the GPS," he added, hoping he wouldn't notice if I let go of the handle. But as I pulled my phone from my pocket, I felt his gaze boring into me. When I looked back, he was staring straight ahead, eyes fixed on the road. "How do you not know where you are?" I exclaimed, surprised by the sudden realization that dawned on me. If he didn't know where he was, that meant I didn't either. Looking around, I saw no street signs or familiar landmarks. The buildings on either side of the road looked the same, dark and imposing. The windows were boarded up, and the paint on their doors hung in peeling strips. "Oh God," I whispered, feeling a cold dread seep into my bones. This was not good. The driver remained silent, his gaze unwavering. I knew then that I wasn't safe, that I shouldn't have played along, but I didn't know how to escape. Turning back to the road, I noticed for the first time that it was empty. No cars passed by. No lights twinkled in the windows of the buildings. The only sound was the distant hum of traffic from another world. In the eerie quiet, I heard the driver speak, his voice barely a whisper. "There's something wrong with this place," he said, his eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "I don't want to be here," he added. As I stood there listening to him, I realized that the cab, with its yellow paint job and dented roof, looked more like a hearse than a taxi. Its headlights seemed to glow with an unnatural light, casting long, distorted shadows on the sidewalk. And the driver's face, illuminated by the dashboard's red glow, appeared ashen and gaunt. I wanted to call out to him, to shake him out of whatever trance he was in, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. Fear froze my throat, and the sight of the driver sent shivers down my spine. The longer I watched him, the more I was convinced that he wasn't human. His eyes, devoid of any warmth or intelligence, seemed to stare straight through me. It felt like an eternity that we stood there frozen in that macabre tableau. But finally, he turned his head and looked at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "You need to run," he rasped, his voice like nails scratching down a chalkboard. "Run while you still can," he added, his lips curling into a grotesque parody of a smile. Era propelled me forward, and I ran without looking back. I didn't dare glance over my shoulder to see what was chasing me, but I could feel its presence behind me, drawing closer with every step. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed on the pavement, pounding a rhythm of fear against my own racing heart. I dared to steal a quick glance over my shoulder. The sight that met my eyes made me scream. Emerging from the darkness, the driver was quickly closing the distance between us. His face was contorted in a terrifying snarl, revealing teeth that were long and sharp as fangs. His eyes burned with a malevolent light, and his arms were stretched out like those of a creature from a nightmare. I didn't wait to see what horrors awaited me at the end of the road. I didn't want to witness the monstrosity that lurked in those darkened windows, in that cursed place where the street wasn't on any map. All I knew was that I had to get away, to escape from the taxi driver, from that nightmarish street, and from whatever evil awaited me there.